Okay, so welcome everyone to the CounselMore Mentorship Roundtable discussion. My name is Marc Gray, and I am your grateful host. This is a CounselMore sponsored event. However, you don't have to be a CounselMore member to attend. Come one, come all, you are most welcome. We have veterans and noobs in the IEC world or any part of the college readiness or college application or college prep, from test prep to a lot of us, help with essays and college lists. And so this is typically just a space where we can all get together and learn from one another, often with best practices, entrepreneurial, marketing innovations that a lot of us are using to get more clients and to keep them and to do a good job. So again, it's a CounselMore sponsored event, but you don't have to be here. Feel free. We meet, feel free to let your friends and colleagues know. We meet once a month. Usually it's the last Thursday of each month, and you can always go to the CounselMore website to register. So today we are talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, using aptitude tests or aptitude assessments in your college counseling practice. Show of hands, we're a pretty small bunch today, so I feel like we can be a little more informal. But so instead of asking you to, anonymously put things in the chat, just a show of hands, does anyone use any kind of uh, psychoanalytic or assessment in their practice? Typically, I do.
I
Trang
do.
says she does not. That's okay. That's okay. There's Catherine. Catherine does. Okay, cool. Am I allowed to ask what you use? Well, tell you what, I am allowed to ask, but you don't have to answer. But if you would answer, I'd be grateful.
I use the 16 personalities, which is
Uh-huh.
the free Myers-Briggs.
Sure. Sure.
I also use uScience.
Hmm.
Um, and
Talk about
I've
that one today.
had kids do some of the uh, what's the Bureau of Labor?
Oh,
Like,
like the Holland code, like the interest profiler. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's a good one. It's a good one.
And but
It
I'm
sounds
I'm
like
fi-
it sounds like you've
finding
got a
kids are
carousel of them.
not super engaged in many of them unless they've
Sure.
taken AP Psych and then they think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's always the AP Psych kids, right? They're like me. They crave to be diagnosed, right? I love a good, don't get me wrong, I really love empirically backed scientific stuff, but I'm also a sucker for the, run-of-the-mill BuzzFeed Harry Potter quiz too. Uh, so, um, I started my practice in test prep. Gradually, more people would ask me to help with their college applications. This was a little over 10 years ago. And I heard about this place called the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation. The Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation it's exactly that. It's a research institution, and they have been researching aptitudes for literally over 100 years. Okay. So I you're I find it very interesting hearing about people's origin stories, how they become independent educational consultants, because I don't know an industry where you have a more diverse group of people from different professional backgrounds, right? Some of us, a lot of us are teachers, some of us are counselors, some of us we're like, financial planners. Some of us are people who worked in sales. One of my good friends, Lee Norwood, was a pharmaceutical sales rep for 20 years, right? But she does this now. So I find it interesting, a lot of us, how we kind of trip, stumble, and somersault into this profession. But uh, a little bit about my background. My 20s were not the funnest, okay? Like I am a typical millennial, right? I was told that my college degree would do all these wonderful things for me, and I'm the victim of not one but two liberal arts degrees, right? And so Trang's nodding her head, okay. And so So finding a career that I really jived with was really tricky. And again, fortunately, I found one that I landed in that allows me to support myself and my family. But it was rough getting here. And don't get me wrong, I believe in the character building, stuff that benefit that comes from a couple of existential crises, right? Kind of figuring out who you are and whatnot. I feel like I could have gone with like four or five less, or fewer in my 20s. And so when I heard that there was this assessment the Johnson O'Connor offered that literally kind of like basically told you not necessarily what you should do, but that aptitudes were just kind of tasks that you wake up naturally inclined to excel at. That sounded really fascinating to me. I never took it with the Johnson O'Connor, but I started telling all my families about it. And so my families started going there and they were like, "Oh my gosh, the data is so interesting." Like for parents, a lot of the information that the students got was a lot of it wasn't new, right? Because they're parents, right? Like they know who their kids are. But it was interesting seeing the way like the data looked and okay, hey, my kid is always, taking stuff apart. Engineer was like top on their list, right? I have another who's really good at with, who draws and doodles a lot. Well, that's because their design memory is super high. So maybe they should go into like graphics design or data visualization. So, I had just gotten married, right? And uh, I coveted all the money I was making at the time. And I said, I am sending people left and right to Johnson O'Connor. I should call and see if I could get some affiliate arrangement, coming up. That was before I was a part of any like association or whatever. And they were not interested, which is fine. They do great work. But I said, well, I wonder if there is a service that I could get certified in to do this myself, or if there's any training. And so I ended up doing what's called I became a Highlands Ability Battery consultant, a certified Highlands consultant. And I did that, early on in my career as an IEC. So because of that, I have probably, and this isn't me tooting my horn, there's a lot I don't know, but I've probably written more articles and know more about aptitude tests than most IECs that I've worked with, right? So it's kind of my thing. Uh, and I have found over the years that weaving aptitude assessments, and we'll talk a little bit more about what an aptitude assessment is and what it isn't, because if you were to Google search right now, uh, best aptitude test, most of the assessments that Google would show you aren't actually aptitude assessments. That doesn't mean the assessments Google is telling you to do aren't good assessments. They're just not measuring aptitudes. Okay. Uh, so I have found that the value that assessing all of my students, their aptitudes, allows me to do a few things. One, it allows me to see how they learn best, how they think, and how they are, and the kind of problems that they're attracted to solving. And so with me knowing that, I'm able to pull a little more like data-driven insights from them whenever we write their essays. Also, I don't know if any of you do this, but any of you do like kind of targeted passion projects with any of your students to make their applications stand out? No, not really. That's fine. Um, we started offering that about 5 or 6 years ago. And so if your student is into like some nonprofit or humanitarian effort that they want to do in their community, or if there's a certain thing that they want to research, I find that aptitude assessments are really instrumental and helpful, or at least insightful into guiding them down those certain paths. So, and then at the end of the day, let's just be real here. The majority of us, I don't know all of you, but the majority of us are doing this for money, right? I mean, like this is our profession. Um, the average aptitude assessment ish is somewhere between 450 to 900 bucks, you know? So it adds to your top line a bit as well. Um, so the benefits, I think, are at least worth talking about. So we will get into that now. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of using slides. I will at least show you this one. So let's talk a little bit about what aptitude assessments are not. Okay, we have personalities. They're not personality assessments, they're not skill assessments, and they're not interest assessments. So, Catherine, I believe you went through the full gamut of all three of those a second ago when you were talking, right? So the free 16 personality types, a lot of people use like the Myers-Briggs, of that. So personalities, I am, by the way, I am not a like trained psychologist. Okay. The when I say personalities, I'm defining them kind of in my own ecosphere here. When I look at personalities, typically they are predictive behaviors in social settings. The higher someone is on take extrovert or introvert, they're going to be more predisposed to act a certain way around a group of people. That's very helpful insight when you're working with students and when you're trying to, kind of move them towards different college majors, but it's not an aptitude. So, for example, take any of you work with a lot of like coders, people who code, kids who code. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of nodding heads. Okay. Um, uh, Coding is a highly isolating uh, activity, right? Like it's not like soccer or basketball where you're doing it with a bunch of people. Um, so often introverts typically have a, proclivity to do well at coding. But just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you do well at coding, right? So maybe a lot of coders are introverts, but not every introvert's a coder. Okay, so second, um, skill assessments. Skills are performed labors or tasks that we do over time, and the more we do them, the better we get at them. Take, for example, do we have any piano players or musicians here? Not so much. Okay, Martine, all right. I see you. What do you play? Am I allowed to ask? Or will you tell me, please?
Piano, but as a child, I haven't played in a while, so yeah.
Yeah, I took
Mhm.
piano lessons as a child as well, and I bet you anything, if you and I were to get on that piano today, we we may not want to record that performance,
Right.
right? Yeah, thank you. So skills are just that. The more time we put into them, the better we get. The less time we put into them, the more we suck, right? So aptitudes are not skills. And then aptitudes are also not interests. Interests are basically things that we enjoy doing. I often define interests as fuel, right? So you take someone who is overworked, underpaid, tired, exhausted, right? But if you input something into their schedule that they actually enjoy, right? Often you may find that that person will have more energy at the end of the day. So that's kind of the role that interests play. Interests are also not aptitudes. The main thing is interests will change over time. I mean, hell, some of the kids I work with, I mean, their college major, what they think they're going to major in will change based on what TV show they're watching, right? Has that ever happened to you guys? A kid's watching a murder show that you're watching, and they think that they're like a criminologist or like they want to study like psych or something like that. It hap I typically get one every year or two like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, you want to be like an FBI agent. We'll see how that goes. So so then what is an aptitude, right? Aptitudes are essentially they are tasks that we have a natural proclivity to excel in. Okay. So for example, let's say I have a nephew who is really, 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 really good at music. Okay. He has a really good singing voice. He plays the violin. He can also play the piano. And honestly, he's 30 now. He kind of makes me sick. He's just good at all these different things, right? And it's just effortless to him. Uh, there's another person like that, Adele, right? She makes me sick. She is so good at singing. Uh, she's like Taylor Swift to me. I've tried to find reasons to not like her, but I just can't, right? She's charming and she does really good. So we can probably agree, even if you don't like her music, that Adele has probably put in the hours necessary to be a really good singer, performer, and probably in the studio as well to be a good like producer, right? However, we can probably also agree that Adele has a little extra something that makes her Adele beyond the hours that she spends. So that natural talent, that's really where aptitudes come in. And as a matter of fact, on there's four aptitude tests. We'll talk about them in a minute, but there are three of them measure musical aptitudes, and the musical aptitudes are rhythm memory, pitch discrimination, and tonal memory. So rhythm is just that. Uh, People with a high rhythm memory, when they're in band, they often play the drums, right? Additionally, they're really good at staying on beat, and a lot of athletes typically have a high rhythm memory. Higher the rhythm memory, and this is ADHD aside, okay? They have a hard time sitting still, right? Um, Pitch discrimination, weirdest aptitude that we test because it impacts so many things. If tonal memory is your ability to remember what you hear, pitch discrimination is your ability to perceive the gaps between sounds, right? So I find that people with a high pitch discrimination, they're very good at string instruments. Also, they're really good at foreign language and replicating accents, right? So it's not just remembering sound, but it's manipulating it, right? So all those are things that you are born with or you don't. And that is an interesting thing about aptitudes is more or less, okay? I'm gonna say this, and some of you are going to probably chafe at this a little bit. Around between 14 to 15 for most kids. Guys can sometimes it takes us a little later for our brains to develop sometimes. But typically teens, early 20s, maybe your aptitudes solidify and they don't change ever after that. The only difference, or sorry, the only exception to that are typically aptitudes that involve vision. Our eyes just start sucking at being eyes around the time we turn 40, typically. Um, or at least they typically don't get better, right? So, knowing a student and knowing what tasks just kind of come natural to them, we can kind of see how that would aid us in our practice, right? If I know that a student is a lot better remembering what they read versus what they hear, or if data kind of comes to them and they can recollect it a lot easier through images. Don't get me wrong, that may not change every time I talk to the person, but I can be a little more intentional with how I communicate with them. Also, I can give them data-driven recommendations as opposed to me just acting as like a spirit medium, right? Whenever I recommend college majors to them and their parents. Now, as we keep progressing, let me show you a couple of other things. Let's talk about how these are measured. So, I have found, I'm being anecdotal here, okay? When it comes to converting uh, sales, like converting a potential client into like a paying customer, I have a much easier time with moms than dads, okay? Uh, Especially finance dads who work in finance. They have all these weird questions they want to ask me. They want like charts and graphs. And when I throw something on a spreadsheet, somehow it just makes my credibility soar. And so often when I'm selling to dads, uh, they'll be like, well, how do they measure this? How do they measure, all this stuff? Like, can't they just game the system and say yes or no? Well, no, the way that a real aptitude test is typically measured, it's really hard to bullshit, actually. So here's an example. There's one aptitude that we measure called spatial relations visualization. That's a word that's fun to say fast. I'm going to call it SRV from here on out. It's just much easier to say. So we measure it by showing students a series of blocks. And then the assessment will say, hey, if we were to kind of like rotate this down and then rotate it to the right, click on the one that would work, right? So the assessment isn't like a bunch of yes or no questions. I believe on the introvert extrovert one, they do ask a couple of like survey-based questions, but on the majority of the assessments, they are like the little mini assessments, the work samples. They're almost more like puzzles, right? So again, it's really hard to kind of skew the evidence unless they don't care about it, right? Unless they're just clicking things. Now, with that said, what's the value of knowing if someone's high or low on this? So a couple of things. One thing before I explain that, I want to be really clear that on an aptitude assessment, and I'm being real with you guys here today, right? This isn't just some, nice feel good, everyone gets a trophy, adage that I tell my clients. Truly, a high score does not equate to a good score, and a low score does not equate to a bad score. And I really mean that. Okay. So, for example, SRV, the block assessment that I just showed you. Someone who is really high on that is often drawn, not all the time, but usually they are drawn to tasks that require them to touch what they're working with, right? So think about that. Most of the students who want to be surgeons, they're often really high on the SRV, which makes sense. You can touch something you cut into, right? Engineers, especially architects, anyone who is more interested in like learning a trade, perhaps, or again, just anything that requires you to touch kind of what you're working with. The exception to that is software engineers. A lot of you who work with kids who code, often coders have a high SRV. So you can't touch software. It's information, right? But the difference is that as opposed to like, let's say, sociological or psychological theory information, right? Coding information is concrete. It's very black and white. The script works or it doesn't, right? So you can have a high SRV and be really good at dealing with careers or education tracks that are highly information based, but the kind of information will often be very concrete. Now, to make this about me, I am notoriously low on this one. All right. Case in point. Can you touch anything I've discussed so far today? Nope. You really can't. Your spouses or your significant others or your kids or your friends, I guarantee you, they've never asked you to run to the grocery store and pick up a 6-pack of aptitudes, right? Aptitudes they're intangible, right? A lot of IECs that I work with, not all of them, a lot of them are really low on the SRV. So again, high does not mean good, low does not mean bad. But take, for example, my wife. My wife is actually really high on this. My wife was a costume designer for 20 years. Okay. You can touch a costume. You can mess with a costume. You can cut into a costume. Okay. When stuff breaks in my house, I have it pretty good. My wife is the one who will immediately start fixing it. Right. However, if a phone call has to be made where information is discussed and like I'm typically the go-to guy, right? My wife's like, there's a fuzzy thing that has to be dealt with. Can you call and do it? And I'm happy to do that because that's, my entire career is based around that. And so I've noticed this over the 8 years I've been administering this assessment. that aptitudes, when they're high, or low, they'll push to be used a certain way, right? So especially when they're high. My wife doesn't seek problems to solve that don't have a physical component, right? So, and then another case in point, just to kind of um, hone in on the fact about how high doesn't mean low and all that. This is an article that I spent way too much time writing on our website. I will put this in the chat as well if any of you want to look at it. This article is not for everyone, but if you want to see every single aptitude that the assessment measures, this is where it's at. One of the cool things, though, one of the better decisions I've made was putting these reports on it. So let's go here. Here's a sample report. There we go. All right. So the most aptitude assessments will measure some personality traits. The majority of these, though, are actual aptitudes. Okay. The one that I just showed you, the SRV, that's over here. That's one of 5 really, 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 really important psychometrics called the driving abilities. These are super important because when they're high, they push to be used. So if a student is high on one, you definitely need an outlet for them in their career or education track, right? When you have an aptitude that's high and you're not able to use it, that's when people have a lot of dissatisfaction with their work. So case in point, the CEO of a company, the ideal CEO of a company would actually be low on all 5 of these. Okay, so again, high does not mean good, low does not mean bad. That's the last time I'll say that, I promise. Okay, so let me look at my slide. Next, we are on to... Okay, so here are the different aptitude assessments that I would say are like worth using. Okay. Now, all right. I am a consultant for the Highlands Ability Battery. I'm also their rep for college counselors. Okay. Free disclosure. This isn't sponsored or whatever. I really enjoy talking about this, but uh, I use this product. Obviously, I'm going to say better things about the Highlands Ability Battery. Okay. With that said, at the Q&A at the end, like, please ask me whatever and I'll tell you anything. Because I don't care, right? Like it doesn't threaten me to talk about how great each of these are, because both of these, the Johnson O'Connor and the Ames, are excellent aptitude tests. Now, if you're interested in using an aptitude assessment in your practice, the quickest and easiest way to do that is with the uScience assessment. uScience is by far the least robust of these 4, but some aptitudes are better than nothing. Okay, and I genuinely mean that. I want to say, I could be wrong, okay, but I want to say I think the typical retail is around 250 to 300. What your clients will end up paying for it. The reason why I don't use uScience is there's 2 spatial aptitudes. uScience only measures one of them. So the difference between that would be like, should you go to law school or should you be an engineer, right? Uh, that's a pretty big distinction, right? So the nuts and bolts one, no, hold up. Yeah, the nuts and bolts one, where like the one that I just showed you, the mechanical one, uScience doesn't test that one, right? Uh, so just to be clear, additionally, uScience doesn't test any of the auditory ones. What's great about uScience is that it's really good to scale. If some of you may do like group sessions with your clients, I haven't found a brilliant way to do that yet. Uh, so I don't know if any of you have found a way to hack that to where you can work with students like 10 or 15 at once. Please do a presentation on it here in a few months. Uh, but uScience was really designed to, oh, my hand's being raised. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, was really designed for schools, right? To integrate into an entire institution and have kids do it. Uh, it's not really designed for IECs, though it totally can be used. And if you're looking at something, the cheapest and easiest way to get into aptitude assessing is through uScience. It just does it. It has these limitations, though. Next is you don't use it at all, but you refer your clients to an institution or a research foundation that measures aptitudes. The only two that I personally would recommend are the Johnson O'Connor and the Ames. So Johnson O'Connor is like the great great grandmother of aptitude testing. Every single legitimate aptitude test came from Johnson O'Connor. Before there were really IP laws back in the day, a couple of technicians or scientists from the Johnson O'Connor just kind of went their own direction and just basically replicated the technology and started doing it in other places. Ames was one of those places. So the technology is very, very, very similar. Johnson O'Connor, I believe, costs $9.50 to do. Parents will do it because they like the name. Like it's again, it's a household brand. They're a nonprofit. It's a very credible place to do it. The only thing is they're only available in certain locations. There's no remote option. There is with uScience. Uh, so you have to like go there, and often I believe they only have like 25 locations in the US ish. So it's tricky. Ames only has one location, Dallas, Texas. That's it. They measure, I believe, the most out of all of them. Uh, However, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a better value. Um, like one of the things that they test are artistic preferences, which admittedly isn't an aptitude. Like if you're more into like abstract versus representational art, right? So again, that could change based on like I don't know, like whatever SpongeBob show you just watched, right? So for an art student, maybe it'd be worth it. But regardless, these two are very credible and really good. For a consultant who like has drank the Kool-Aid, is really into like psychological assessments, the Highlands Ability Battery is awesome. It measures all of the audio aptitudes, all of the spatial aptitudes. The only thing it doesn't measure that the Ames and the Johnson O'Connor assessment measure is the hand-eye coordination assessment. We haven't quite figured out a way to do that virtually yet, right? Uh, with that said, though, there are ways that you can like, I think there are like certifications you can get to do it yourself. I myself have not done that certification. The hand-eye coordination stuff, even for surgeons, it's just becoming less and less important as more and more things are automated and like, robots are doing heart surgery these days now, right? So that's the only thing really you're missing. The biggest barrier, though, to getting in to the Highlands is, of course, I mean, it takes 16 hours of time to do it asynchronously. Uh, I believe, yeah, it's like 2 full days, and I believe they're on like a Thursday and a Friday, and it's all on Zoom. I did it pre-COVID, so I actually flew out there and like did the training myself. Uh, and I believe it's around $2,100, so it's pretty expensive. So if you're interested in doing something and maybe seeing if using cognitive assessments in your or at least aptitude assessments in your practice, uScience is totally a really good viable way to get into it. If you want the most robust thing for a consulting practice, I would say the Highlands Ability Battery is the best. But again, what problems is it solving? That is really, I would argue, the determining factor on whether it would work right in your practice or not. For me, I got into the HAB not for the most like reasonable or wise reasons. I just believed in having data-driven like answers for the career component. I really wanted my students to have a data-driven career plan that wasn't just based on what I thought might be a good idea. And when I say data-driven, guys, I am not a data scientist. I am as fuzzy as it gets. I don't know how to code. I'm not an engineer. Okay. Uh, so an assessment tool that does that for me was really valuable, right? And that's it. It also fit with how I marketed my brand, right? So like when I talk to parents, I'm like, look, if all you want me to do is help your students apply for all the UCs and the Ivy Leagues, like I'm not the person to call. You should call someone else. I have colleagues, right? Um, my goal is to get your kid into a university where they're happy, and they won't show up 5 years later living in your basement and only coming up to see you when they need the Wi-Fi password, right? Like that's kind of how I position my brand during sales calls, right? So for me, it made a lot of sense. Um, I charge 550 a pop for an aptitude assessment for uScience. I toyed around with them for a little bit just to see kind of how it worked to offer a cheaper, like I think I charged 250 for uScience, but I know some consultants who charge more. Um, but now it's just every student I do, whether it's for my like introductory plan, my medium, or my fully comprehensive, they get an aptitude assessment. So it's kind of been an integral part of the services that we offer now. Overall, though, and again, I mentioned how fuzzy I am, right? Like the debriefs, as a Highlands consultant, I'm contractually obligated to give at least an hour and a half debrief to a student whenever they do their assessment. Um, when we finish the debrief, and it is a lot of information, my favorite thing, aside from, like my top line going up and then being able to kind of weave it into the way I market my brand, I love the idea, or I love it when my students start to see themselves under a different light, kind of as someone who's capable of having like really valuable professional skills, right? I look at college counseling as teaching students how to market themselves. It's really the first rigorous exercise in self-marketing that students have to undergo. Uh, and so when I do these debriefs and I hear a student talking about, oh, I have a high design memory. So of the 5,000 people that took this test in the last 2 years, I'm in the 95th percentile. I can remember images and I have the potential to manipulate images and remember them better than 95% of those people. That's really cool, right? It's very cool to see them take that data and kind of incorporate it into their identity, right? And to kind of, I'm not saying that happens with every debrief I give, okay? I mean, like they're kids, right? But those experiences I find are really valuable and meaningful. So that is my summary on aptitude testing. Uh, we can now open this up for Q&A, and I am happy to answer any questions anyone has.
So
I have
what's
a
the
question.
difference? Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Liz was first, I think, and then Lori,
Yeah,
which I love your bookshelf, Lori. Go ahead.
this is sort of a random question because
Love it.
I live outside of the UK. I mean, I live in the UK outside of London. And so most of the students that I work with that are going to the States just happen to be athletes. That's sort of my specialty is swimmers and tennis
Oh,
players going
cool.
to the States. Um, but I love the idea of because I do feel like, especially UK students, they sort of come to me, they already know exactly what they want to study. They have everything sort of planned out. But I question how much a 16, 17-year-old can know specifically about what they want to study. At what point do you introduce this to
Sure. Sure. Okay. So
what's the
again,
next?
I have drank the Kool-Aid, right? Like I really love this stuff, okay? It's the first service I give them. The very first thing I do with them is give them an aptitude assessment. Now, I actually find it makes my job a lot easier when they come to me with a plan. Okay. So if I have a student, and I had a student a while back, this student, really sweet dude, his grandma passed away due to complications of Alzheimer's. Okay. And he was very integral and instrumental in taking care of her while all that was happening. Um, there was no way in hell I could convince him to not go to med school, right? Like he had drank the Kool-Aid when it came to med school, okay? And there was no way I could do that. When I did his aptitude report, there were a lot of red flags about that. Well, for me, there were red flags for me. I didn't like show up and be like, you're going to suck at being, a doctor, right? But his design memory, I've that's a buzzword I've been thrown out a lot, was ridiculously low. Med school is looking at PowerPoints and images until your eyes fall out. Okay. So there were a few other things too where nursing made a lot more sense because it wasn't like the doctor ultimately made decisions that prolonged his grandma's help, but what he found the most valuable was the one-on-one with the patient, right? And so whenever I worked with him, I was like, hey, if you want to do med school, that's great. Here are a few things I just want to make sure you understand about med school, right? And that sadly was a student I kind of lost track of. Like I worked with him, he got into the colleges that he wanted and whatnot, but I think his family moved, right? And anyway, so I don't know what happened to him, but he did end up changing his mind and doing nursing. So I find that when they come to you with a career, you can be like, oh, okay, well, like take for example, I have a niece who really likes art. Her design memory is also low, right? Uh, but she has lots of high aptitudes in other places, but training people, like it was more like coaching people to draw things, right? She became an art teacher, right? As opposed to, anyway. So I find it really valuable when they come in. As far as the lowest I would give someone the assessment is 14. And I prefer to get them when they're young, because then when they're that young, I can be like, hey, you have a high processing speed and your design memory is high and your SRV is high. Have you ever tried coding before? Because your careers that correspond with coding are through the roof. Why don't we drop you off at a coding boot camp for a weekend? By the way, uh, big lesson I've recently learned. I tell kids they're really good at coding, and the next thing they do is they take AP computer science to see if they like it. It's the worst idea ever. It's the best way to get kids to hate coding. Drop them off at a boot camp, and get them to make fun stuff. But yeah, the sooner the better, because that allows you to kind of leverage that intelligence to kind of guide them. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you
cool.
very
Yeah, of course. Lori with the cool bookshelf.
Oh, hi. That's just an image, a backdrop. But
Still, I like it. Go ahead.
yeah, I just I've been hearing about Highlands Ability Battery, and of course I first heard about it after I just purchased all these uScience profiles. Um,
Yeah, that happened.
so I still have 16 of them, which is I can hardly get people to take it, uScience, like
Mhm.
especially the ones who want to do business, or they show up knowing what they want to do. They won't really do it as much as a person who's questioning, who has no idea really. So what's the difference in the two that you like? Do you have, I mean, I sort of want to switch, but I feel like I don't want to waste the profiles.
I wouldn't if I were you.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
the difference. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Go on, continue.
Oh, I was just wondering, like, if you could tell me a couple of like things that I would discover with kids
Mhm.
about them specifically, and like how to get the training also, and what, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
more about it all. Yeah.
Yeah, tell you what, give me a second. I just put my email in the chat. If you
Okay.
have, if I don't answer anything, or if I don't answer all your questions, feel free
Okay.
to send me an email, and that goes to anyone here.
Good.
So, um, it takes a bit of work to, it takes using the assessments to get good at it. One thing I really appreciated about the Highlands certification is Dory Stiles is their trainer, and she is the matron saint of aptitude testing. She's been doing it for 30 years. She's got a PhD in industrial psychology. She knows her shit. Like, she is just really, 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 really good. She opens, stupid on her part, but she has a link to her calendar for new consultants to schedule 15-minute phone calls if they have questions. Well, I used that all to hell my first year consulting. So I learned a whole bunch, right? On, hey, I got this kid, they have a low SRV, super high classification, but low on this. The report keeps saying that they should do something in business management, but that doesn't sound sexy to a kid. Like business like and a lot of it was niche management, right? Like warehouse management or distribution management. How do I sell that to a parent? So I had a lot of conversations like that with Dory. That expedited my my ability to see a person's results and kind of, you know, uh, take some shots in the dark on how they can apply them. Uh, I would, as far as, not getting people to take it, Lori, I don't, far be it from me to tell you how to, interact with your clients, but if you need, if you want to use it and leverage the data, um, I made it a requirement. You work with me, you get an aptitude test. This is how I do it, right? And so like my word of mouth referrals, uh, because truly the debrief, a lot of it's really for the parents, right? Like, I want the parents to see the value I'm adding, but I also want them to know their kids in a way that they hadn't thought of before, right? So, not every time, but you're that leaks into the word of mouth referrals, right? Like your referrals will talk about this assessment and how valuable it was. Additionally, in your Google reviews, if you have a Google business profile and people are saying things, every now and then, like, we get that super client, right? Who just like loves everything we do and wants to get every service we have. Those are the people you get to get Google reviews for you, right? And get them to talk about this damn weird like assessment that you give. Uh, I found that helps too. Hey, what's this weird assessment I'm seeing on your Google reviews? So I would say make them take it. Again, far be it for me to tell you how to work with your clients, but make them take it. And by looking at the reports, I think you'll get better at it. Also, I mean, as long as you don't, as long as you're not emailing me every week, if you need 5 seconds, if you want to send me a screenshot, I'm happy to be like, well, these are the things that I would be looking at. If I didn't answer all of your questions, feel free to email me and I can get back with you on that. Does that help at all? Okay, cool. Uh, any other questions? We probably have enough time for one more.
Do you have any input on administering this test to families where the belief is like this kid must be an engineer or else we will not pay for him to go to college?
Sure, sure, sure. So yeah, I would give you the same answer that I gave Liz, right? Like, well, I would ask a few questions first, right? Oh, really? Like, and which I'm sure you do. Oh, how come? Right? Uh, I want to figure out why, right? Because take for example, Most engineers are really high on what's called classification. It's a pattern recognition aptitude. Uh, ER doctors are through the roof on it, right? They're people who do really well in fast-paced work. Therapists or divorce attorneys, they're often really low. Radiologists, I don't want the person who's screening me for cancer to be in a rush, right? Like I want them to be very, very methodical and reflective, right? So I got an engineer, like one of those families that you're talking about, a couple of years ago. This boy was low on classification. He was also really low on spatial relations theory, which, I mean, the kid made A's in all of his like math classes, but these were like 92s, where everything else was like, 98, 97, right? And he had to get a tutor for it. So already I was seeing some of the, like, hey, this is not the best fit for you, right? So I wasn't able to persuade them to like drop engineering altogether, but I was able to get them to do civil engineering, city planning, which is a lot slower. It's not near as crazy fast as opposed to an engineer consultant dropped on an oil rig to figure out how to fix a drill where a shell company is losing millions of dollars every day if it doesn't get fixed right now, right? That's the kind of like fast-paced work a mechanical engineer often works with, right? Um, but I would say if the parents are hell-bent on something, I would tell those parents, hey, if you're dead set on this, these are the things I would be aware of. Their upper level classes are probably going to be immensely challenging. This also means uh, if you're trying to get into like a super competitive program, um, like take for example, I work with a lot of students who go to BYU, uh, Brigham Young University. Brigham Young University is as like vanilla and nice of a university as there is. Their chemical engineering program is brutal. There's so many applicants, they have to weed the weak out. Like that's what the first two courses are designed to do. So I told that family if they're in a competitive program, like they're going to have breakdowns upon breakdowns in college, right? This has been my experience. So again, you can tell them, well, these are the things I would watch out for. You can do that, but as a professional, I would advise against it. That's typically what I've done in the past. I don't know if that's a palatable answer that you're looking for, but that's what I've done. Does that make sense, more or less?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Shucks. Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more, if there is one. You're not obligated to have one, but here I am for the next 2 minutes.
I just want to say that when you were talking about high not being good and low not
Uh-huh.
being bad, when I'm doing my assessments, I tell them it's more like a temperature, and that
I may plagiarize that if you don't mind.
warm is not necessarily better than cool. And if you want to go skiing, cold is great for snow skiing and hot is great for water skiing. And because they do, when they get those low scores, I
Hmm.
just tell them you're a snow skier. Like you have a different skill set than the than the hot people. And it's not a judgment. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
so
I'm totally plagiarizing that, by the way.
excellent. And the other thing is that my son, who is now 33, took this when he was 16, and his results were that he should either be a neurosurgeon or a boat captain. And I was
Why
like,
not?
because that's obviously a double major everyone should pursue, along with, theater and petroleum engineering. And so for 5 years, I was like, you can take the assessment and it's going to maybe give you some insight into, strengths or areas of interest, but it's not going to be, here's your career path, step one, step two, and now you're a neurosurgeon boat captain. But as it turns out, my son became a Navy helicopter pilot. which
Kind of
I
meets in the middle, right?
I would say somehow is, in fact, neurosurgeon boat captain. You know, he loved the ocean. He didn't want to be in an office with a computer. And, you know, but that high stakes, that very technical part of his brain, you know, where he wanted to be challenged. And
Sure.
so, you know, and so now I tell the whole story of, you know, it might be that you end up somewhere and you look back and you're like, okay, this is where the breadcrumbs were leading me. But, you know, it wasn't, yeah. Anyway,
Totally. You know, I tell my parents whenever they whenever just to kind of build expectations, you know, if you're expecting a raffle ticket to pop out of your laptop that says doctor, lawyer, or engineer, this is not the assessment for you, right? One thing I do like about the training I got as a Highlands consultant was the Highlands whole person model. All of these arrows here, think of this as like an algebraic equation, you know, A plus B plus C equals ideal career. All of these variables are important. One variable is not more important than the other. Heaven forbid you do something you're good at, but that you absolutely hate. Likewise, what if you're doing something you're good at, you enjoy, but you're not around the people you want to be with? You know, you could be really good at manipulating images. You could have an interest in marketing, but if you're a health and wellness nut, you're probably not going to want to necessarily do the next ad campaign for a cigarette company, right? So all of these things matter. The real value with aptitude testing is that aptitudes are ridiculously hard to measure unless you have a sophisticated tool to do it. Uh, and they're reliable because they don't change as much as other things do. So no, they are not meant to be looked at in a vacuum. They're meant to be kind of, you know, holistically looked at with all those other things. But they can definitely be a guiding star as far as, you know, assisting and counseling your student. Well, look, you guys have been so sweet and wonderful and lovely today. Um, I will tell you the next month we are going to have a really cool speaker. He's on the younger side. He's like in his like mid to early 20s, I think. But it's going to be all about dual enrollment, uh, advising your students on how to properly go about doing that. Thank you all for coming. And I'm going to hit the end button and let you lovely people get back to your lives. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right.
Peace out, Girl
Thanks.
Scout. Bye-bye.
Bye.